Hello, good evening, and welcome to another live episode of the League One show brought to you by Over the Bar. Again, tonight it's myself, David, and Ben, a resident Ipswich fan, co-host of the show, joining you this evening to go through things all League One. The show's been slightly different this week, simply because we are fully aware that we've not had much in terms of League One football over the last few weeks, and obviously we didn't want to be coming on talking about two games that have happened over a weekend and things like that. So what we're going to do this week is it's going to be a bit of a mid-season review, just to talk about everything that's happened between August and now. We're going to be offering up our manager of the season, player of the season, young player of the season. We've asked you guys to get involved on Twitter. In the meantime, there's been plenty of tweets that have come in that we'll cover in the show. So make sure you do stick around for that later on in the show. We'll be announcing our player, manager, and young player of the season. As always, we will be answering your questions live throughout the show. So if you do have any questions for us both, just pop in the live chat. We will cover them off later on in the show. I know it's not like weekly games, but we can still talk about the season as a whole if you do have any questions about that. Yeah, we'll jump straight into it. So it's quite an interesting season so far. So we currently have Rotherham leading the way from Sunderland, only 1 point behind now after some of the games have been caught. But Wigan, Wickham and Oxford still in hot pursuit as well. With Plymouth falling away over recent months, and we've still got a lot of big teams chasing. We've got Portsmouth and Sheffield Wednesday just outside the playoffs. MK Dons having a really good start to the season. At the other end of the table, we've got a very poor Doncaster side propping up the table. Crew on a bit of a good run at the minute. We'll obviously come to talk about those as the show goes on. And last season's beaten playoff finalists, Lincoln, and surprise package of last season, Gillingham, also in the bottom four. So before we really get into the meat of the show, Ben, what have you made of this League One season so far? Because it's definitely thrown up a lot of surprises so far, hasn't it? You're on mute, Ben, I think.
On mute. Great start. I remember saying to you before the show that I expected there to be plenty of technical difficulties from my end, and it's already happened. So, but anyway, yeah, I think you're right to say that there's been plenty of surprises because predominantly when doing my research, I realised that a lot of clubs haven't actually spent a lot. So due to the impacts of COVID, a lot of clubs haven't really spent anything and have brought in a lot of loans and free transfers. But when you look at the transfer or the league table at the moment, you see a lot of clubs who have been kind of like underperforming and a lot of clubs who are almost overperforming considering how much they've spent and considering who they've brought in. So we'll probably talk about it later on in the show in regards to who's done what, who's where in the table, and who spent what in the transfer window, but there's plenty of things to talk about. And I think it's interesting to see which teams have also climbed up the table. I'm just going to mention one now, but Crew, they're on a little bit of an upward spiral at the moment. That may be rich of me to say, as they may eventually drop down a little bit, but they're a team who we certainly need to talk about later on in the show, because as you said, there is a lot to get into, and a lot of teams have sprung out surprises, whether for the right reason or for the wrong reason.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, we'll talk about a lot of the teams. We might not necessarily get around to talk about every single team in the league, but we'll do our best to cover the main ones and all the stories that have happened throughout the season so far. What we'll do is we'll talk about the transfer window first of all, Ben, because we came into this season obviously on the back of a very busy transfer window. So heading into the start of the new season, so obviously your beloved Ipswich were very active in the transfer window under them manager Paul Cook. Bolton very active. Wigan very active. Spent quite a bit of money as well. Sunderland didn't probably bring as many as people were expected over summer, but what did you make of that summer transfer window first of all, and then a lot of the business a lot of the clubs did, because obviously there was a lot of big ones to talk about, weren't there?
Yeah, it's funny because the teams who have spent a lot, they've actually been really underperforming. And I'm not too sure why, but there has actually been a bit of a pattern. You look at the likes of Charlton, who spent over £700,000. They've signed the likes of Charlie Kirk, Elliot Lee on loan from Luton, and the likes of our Harry Arter, Stephen Henderson, and Papa Soare. But Charlton, okay, take away the fact that Johnny Jackson has kind of revitalised them lately. Maybe they've been on a bit of a dip lately, but they have kind of been performing performing a bit better. Charlton have been massively underperforming this season. And then you look at the likes of Ipswich, who've spent over £2 million on 19 players. They've been massively underperforming as well. And you kind of see that the two teams who spend the most in the league haven't necessarily been doing the best. Another team who I will bring up as well, given how they've been massively, in my opinion, underperforming, is Bolton Wanderers, who spent £300,000. They signed Kachunga, George Johnson, who was on the free, Amadou Bakayoko, and Xavier Amarachi on a very expensive loan from Man City. And considering the players that they signed, they're another team alongside of the two that I just mentioned who should really be doing better. So the thing that I've kind of noticed in the transfer window is that a lot of these teams have spent a lot of money. You've actually splashed the cash. They haven't been performing well at all, whether it's because the players haven't settled in well at all, or whether it's just because there's been no strategy behind the transfers. It's the weird one, really. But again, like teams such as Wycombe and Plymouth, who literally didn't spend anything in the transfer window, they've been doing really well as well. So yeah, I'm not sure whether you could look into that, David, in regards to whether the teams who've spent less have actually been performing better. But it's definitely an interesting thing to bring up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's two exceptions. I think Sunderland, I don't think they've thrown big fees around, but I think they are spending a lot more on wages than a lot of other clubs. So I think you could kind of class them as a big spender to a degree. And Wigan spent quite a bit of money in the summer, very active, and they're doing quite well. So I think they're the two exceptions. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, especially about Bolton. I weren't expecting Bolton to get top six, but I definitely weren't expecting to be 17th at the halfway point, only 4 points outside of the bottom four. So, and Ian Evatt made some very bold claims earlier on in the season, saying that they were the best side in the division, and crap like that. And it's when you make comments like that, you're definitely making a rod for your own back, really. And Bolton have been largely disappointed. They had a half decent start, but league wins have been hard to come by over recent months. So having a quick look at their form, I think I can only see they've won one game since the middle of November, and that was against a very poor Doncaster side. They beat Crewe, and that was a league win before that, a couple of weeks before, and they're the bottom two in the division. And then you have to go quite far back for their only previous win before that, and that was the start of October, home to Shrewsbury. So they have been struggling a lot as of late, Bolton. I think Ian Evatt could come under quite a bit of pressure going into the second half of the season, because when you're making comments early in the season saying you've got the best team in the division and things like that, you're setting the expectation up there for success, and if you're not delivering, then you've kind of got yourself to blame there, really. I do want to focus on Ipswich a little bit, Ben, obviously, with you being a big Ipswich fan, and them arguably having one of the biggest stories of the season in terms of sacking Paul Cook. It's been like a month or so now since Cook was relieved of his duties at Portman Road. So do you still agree with that decision? Obviously, you've got McKenna in now from United. How are things shaping up, and what's like now Cook has gone?
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed to see Paul Cook go, because when you bring in 19 players and you also let go of 20 players as well, then I don't think you should necessarily be expected to immediately turn things around. Because when you look at Paul Cook and his CV, a lot of the jobs that he's gone into have actually been long-term projects. You look at the likes of Wigan, Portsmouth. It's taken him a while to turn them around, but he turned them around and he got them promoted. So I did feel a bit bad for him, and it's actually worth bringing up that earlier on Sky Sports, Paul Cook did say, "I'm so disappointed because it's a fantastic club, the fan base, the training ground, the town itself, absolutely magnificent." But then he also went on to say, "It's grossly unfair when you can put a manager's stats on the table when in the summer we released 27 to 30 players and brought in 19 new ones." So Paul Cook, he was disappointed as well. And I think he sold the town owners on the fact that this was going to be a long-term project and that this season could almost be a write-off. But that didn't play out. And as soon as we got a few bad results, which I think happened after the Wycombe game, which should have been a turning point, really, considering we did beat them 4-1 away from home, Paul Cook got sacked, and I was disappointed, really, because he's a good manager, a good man, knew what he was doing, and I reckon he did have a long-term plan in his pocket. But unfortunately, the new owners, they pulled the trigger too early. That is a controversial opinion. I know a lot of Town fans don't necessarily agree on that, and brought in Manchester United coach Kieran McKenna. So it's too early, really, to say anything about Kieran McKenna. I know we're doing a review of the first half of the season, but Kieran McKenna's only had one game, so he hasn't really, or we haven't really got anything to say about him. But all I have to say about Ipswich is that the owners haven't necessarily listened to their own vision, and I think you have to point a lot of the blame not to the owners, because I think the owners have all good intentions, but more so to Mark Ashton. Now, just quickly, because I don't want to go on for too long, Mark Ashton, he was Bristol Rovers' director of football, if you will, and he had a very bad reputation there just for signing players off the whim, really, for signing players on the free, on the expensive as well, and for almost stockpiling players they didn't really need. Now, some of them worked well, some of them actually have become very well-known players at the club, good players like Hans Masongo, who's a young French player, but then a lot of them didn't necessarily work out as well. And I reckon a lot of Ipswich fans are kind of finding out why Bristol fans don't like him anymore, because Mark Ashton's done the same at Ipswich. Signed 19 players, around 10 of whom who haven't necessarily hit the ground running and who've barely been used. And ultimately, in my opinion, it's backfired. And I reckon Paul Cook kind of got the brunt of the blame for that, when really I don't think it's Paul Cook's fault. I know he likes signing players. I put most of the blame to Mark Ashton. So sorry for going on. I'd like to know your thoughts, if you're in the comments on that, your thoughts on that, David, as to whether you think it's Paul Cook or Mark Ashton, our director of football, and to whether you think we could potentially get into the playoffs, because in my opinion, I don't think we can.
Yeah, 11 points off top six at the minute. It's a big ask, isn't it? So I'm not expecting a top six finish from Ipswich, but they are in a better position than some other teams have been in the past that have made late playoff charges previously. So I wouldn't rule it out completely. They're in a better position than what like Oxford were this time last season, for example. So it's not completely out of the realm. I think it's difficult to pin all the blame on one person in this situation. Obviously, when you've got such a high turnover of players in the summer, I do think that you do need to be a bit more patient. When Cook did get sacked, we did obviously came on and did that live special. And yeah, I was really, really shocked at the time. I thought Cook would have been given the full season unless something dramatic would have happened. Say they'd been rock bottom at this stage of the season, yeah, you could probably make a point of it. But yeah, I was very shocked to see Cook go. And I can see the comment on the screen from Matt Baker. I agree with Ben that Cook deserved more time. I'm not an Ipswich Town fan, though, just a neutral on this subject. Yeah, I'm very much a neutral as well, Mark, and I agree with that point. I thought Cook should probably have been given a lot more time than he was given. Obviously, the owners made their decision, and it looks like they're content with it, going for a younger manager. Inexperienced at this level as well, so it'll be very interesting to see how they do heading into the second half of the season. We'll talk about league leaders, Rotherham. So since we've last been on the air, or they had their first defeat since I think it was like August, September, when they played Accrington away on Boxing Day. It was a 1-0 defeat. Responded quite well since then, beating Bolton on New Year's Day, and then dispatching Crewe in the Pizza Cup last night. So Rotherham have been the standout side, haven't they, so far, Ben? Top of the league. Only just had their incredible run brought to an end by a dogged Accrington side. So what have you made of Rotherham so far?
Yeah, so Rotherham, I admire them so much as a club. You look at their transfer window, they spent nothing and actually had an income of 1.17 million. They sold Matt Crooks. They have bought in the likes of Shane Ferguson, Curtis Tilt, who's a fantastic player, possibly a centre back who I would love at Ipswich, Ollie Rathbone, who you know from Rochdale, and Will Griggs. So a very shrewd transfer window, as I didn't spend any money on any of them. So overall, when you look at where they are at the moment, they're flying in League One. I think you can kind of overlook that loss the other day, because teams do lose in a season. That may sound like the most cliched statement ever, but you can kind of see through these losses. And overall, I think they've been doing really, really well. If I could just speak about the like the running of the club and how the club has kind of like been this season. I think Warner's been a fantastic manager at the club. He's a great man manager. He knows what he's doing now. And I don't think people really give him enough credit, really, considering how long he's been at the club and given how the club were when he took over. So this season, this is probably the strongest because I know Rotherham, as of late, have been a yo-yo club. That isn't to diminish them or anything. But I reckon this season, they look the strongest going into the future. I expect them to get promoted into the Championship from here. It would take something huge for them not to, in my opinion. But in my opinion, Paul Warney's been there. He's done that. He's managed in the Championship. He's managed in League One. He knows what it takes to get promoted and to stay up in the Championship. He is more than equipped just to see this through and to kind of like see this Rotherham side into the Championship. But yeah, I've been very impressed with Paul Warne. He's a very underrated manager in my opinion because in previous seasons nobody have really given him the credit he deserves. And yeah, like this Rotherham side as well, given how shrewd they've been in this transfer window, they've performed absolutely remarkably, really. Beautiful football on the pitch. They've been absolutely destroying teams. A team that I'm not looking forward to coming up against. So yeah, like I've been very, very impressed. So David, what have you made of this Rotherham side and how impressed have you been by Paul Warne?
Yeah, Rotherham have been for me the standout side. I know it's easy to say with them being top of the league, but there's only one team that have outscored them this season. That's Sunderland, which I didn't see that happening a few weeks ago because Sunderland seems to have been free scoring form last few weeks. But incredibly, only 17 goals conceded from their opening 24 league games. That is a remarkable achievement for this stage of the season. So you can't really discount Rotherham on that front. The defence has been incredible, looks strong going forward. So where are the weaknesses in this Rotherham side? Best attack, well, second best attack, the best defence. So yeah, they are the standout side. In terms of Paul Warne, he's done a fantastic job, and I think it'd be quite easy for in previous years when they've been struggling in the Championship or slow starts to life in League One, where the board might have pulled the trigger on one, but I think they're definitely reaping the rewards for patience with him. I think this side, when I don't want to say when, sorry, if they get promoted back to the Championship, are a lot better equipped. But yeah, I think they're for me the favourites to go on and lift the title. Lemon Wigan, Sunderland will be in the mix. Well, for me, it's two of those three with the way things are at the minute. Obviously, only halfway there and only halfway the season played. Just before we do move on to talk about the next team, so if you are watching us live on Twitter, unfortunately, we're unable to use the live chat function on that. So if you do want to get involved on the live chat, head over to YouTube, ask us some questions. If you've got any about the season, anything about League One, we'll happily get that answered for you. And whilst you're there, drop us a subscribe and like the video as well. We very much appreciate that. So Sunderland are back in automatic promotion contention, Ben, after a bit of a dip in form. I think it was around October, November time, but they've really started to hit form again recently. Again, obviously, it's yourself that's referred to Lee Johnson on many occasions as Streaky Lee, but they're definitely on a good streak at the minute. Win the last games 5-0 on to Sheffield Wednesday and 3-0 away at Doncaster. So yeah, what have you made of Sunderland over the last few weeks?
Now, out of all the teams who we will talk about tonight, this is one of the teams that I'm most undecided about because they spent £200,000 in the transfer window, bought in the likes of Alex Pritchard, Thorburn Hotman from Bayern Munich and Corey Evans, and they've both been really, really impressive. Absolutely destroyed teams, like when they beat Crewe the other night. Absolutely thrashed them at home the other night. I think it was 7-0. I might be wrong on that. And they've also lost as well. They've also surprisingly lost games too. So this is a very inconsistent Sunderland side. Now, Lee Johnson, I think the question we kind of need to bring up excuse me, is whether he can see through the rest of the season. Because again, this Sunderland side, they can dip in form. And it goes without saying that Lee Johnson, at every club he's been at, he has kind of struggled to see it through to the end. He is a known, and I mean this with all due respect, a known bottler. He bottled it in the playoffs plenty of times with Bristol, didn't quite get to the finishing line. That's not to say that he's a very, very talented manager, that he's a fantastic manager, a great man manager, and a great person to have in and around the club. But if I was a Sunderland fan, I'd just be worried that come the deep ends of the season, maybe come March or April time, how will they be then? How will they fare then once the fixtures start piling up? Should they still be in the Papa John's Trophy? I'm not sure if they're still in it or not, but I think they are. Should they still be in that? Whether those fixtures will start piling up in their fixture schedule as well. It to be very interesting to see where they are and where they are come that period of time. But overall, if I can just assess Sunderland on how they play football and what they are like when they are performing really well, they are a fantastic team to watch. They play tiki-taka football, fantastic passing game. Their strikers can score for days, like they have a really great attacking trio. And ultimately, they're a very talented because they have a very young side as well. Young side to watch. And again, I've been very critical of Lee Johnson. Some people may say that I've been too critical of him. But if he can get this team playing the way they have been for the rest of the season, then this is a team who could potentially get playoffs or automatics. There is no better team on their day than Sunderland when they are playing well. But again, as I just said, it's their inconsistencies I do get worried about. So, Dave, what do you make of Sunderland? How do you think they've performed so far, and where do you see them come May time once the season is coming to an end?
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Sunderland, especially over the last few weeks. Started to click into gear a little bit. My only concern is in terms of the goals. So, yeah, they are the top scorers in the division. But when you look at Ross Stewart getting 15 of those goals, it's obviously a third of their goals. Obviously, I know a lot of clubs at this level are crying out for like 20 goal season striker, and Sunderland definitely got that in Ross Stewart. My only concern is if he was to get injured, the next top goal scorer is Nathan Broadhead on 5 goals. So it's a big gulf there between the 15 of Stewart and the 5 of Broadhead. So my only concern would be is if Stewart was to get pick up in like a longer term injury, do they have a reliable goal scorer? That's my only concern on that front anyway. But yeah, Sunderland are looking really, really good. Just before we on to the next team, Mark Baker. Must admit, I think this may be the year Sunderland actually make it out of the league. Yeah, I agree with Mark. I don't see him finishing any lower than third. For me personally, we'll come back to talk about it later in the show, but my top 3 are Rotherham, Wigan, and Sunderland. I know that's the current top 3, but they are the 3 standout sides. I'd be very shocked if they didn't finish as the top 3, but I can't decide on an order. I was thinking about before we came on my order, but yeah, I can't think of an order on that one. So rather than just dwelling on the promotion chase, we'll cover off some of the other ones. So we'll have a look at some of the playoff chasing side. So we won't dwell on it too much because I know we're going to come back to some later in the show. The current playoff mark. I'm really sorry, I can't get my words out. Wigan, Wycombe, Oxford, and Plymouth currently make up the playoffs. So then 4 sides, Ben. Are they sides that you expected to see in the top 6 at this stage of the season? Is there any there that are surprising to you that you didn't expect there?
Personally, I didn't see Plymouth getting in the playoffs at all. I think they may actually struggle to stay in the playoffs considering they've lost Ryan Lowe and they've had some big injuries in their squad, Brendan Galloway being one of them. But Plymouth, they are a surprise side in the playoffs as they haven't spent anything and most of their signings have been on the free, really. They have some very good players like Luke Jeffcott, Ryan Hardy, but this is a team who I think we can all agree on at the start of the season, they weren't favourites to go into the playoffs at all. So for them to be 6 at the moment on 43 points, that is actually very, very impressive. So if they don't get into the playoffs, if I was a Plymouth fan, I wouldn't be too disappointed considering how well they've done. But Schumacher has got a big task on his hands. So they're a team who I am surprised just to be in the playoffs. Oxford under Carl Robinson, I expected them to be there considering where they were last season. There could have been a bit of a hangover from the playoffs last season considering it was a heartbreak for Oxford. But I reckon Carl Robinson is a very good side. He suits this Oxford side very well. So I reckon they're going to stay there or thereabouts in the playoffs. And Wigan, well, there's not really much to say about Wigan. They've spent a lot of money. Liam Richardson's been a fantastic manager. He's managed them incredibly well so far this season. But Wycombe Wanderers, look, I mean, Wycombe are a very good side, and I do admire them. Like, I do admire them as a footballing side and how far they've come. The fact that they got promoted to the Championship last season. But or two seasons ago now, isn't it? But Gareth Ainsworth, the problem that I have with this Wycombe side is that they don't play exciting football. They very much play very defensive football, which there's nothing wrong with. But they are a side that teams can kind of play through if they just play with the ball on the floor. If a team plays through them, plays with the ball on the floor and literally runs out their defence, then they are easy to break down. So this Wycombe side, I am kind of surprised to see where they are at the moment, considering the fact that they have had some big defeats this season, significantly against Ipswich, which was 4-1. But look, when you look at where they are in the league at the moment, they're fourth in the league, and they have been performing well. Gareth Ainsworth does know how to manage a club in League One. And I think for all the managers in the playoffs at the moment, Gareth Ainsworth is probably the manager who is best equipped just to kind of like see the playoffs through, kind of just, see this Wycombe side through till the end of the season. And for me, what through till the end of the season is simply staying in the playoffs, because I reckon they're more or less well equipped to do that. Again, they're another side who haven't really spent a lot at all, really. They spent nothing on Sam Vokes from Stoke. So yeah, they're a side that I'm actually, and this is quite a controversial opinion, but a side that I'm very surprised to see in the playoffs. So David, Plymouth, Wycombe, I'm surprised to see in the playoffs. I'm going to send this question out to the people in the chat as well, but who are you surprised to see in the playoffs? And who do you reckon is best equipped to see the season through?
Yeah, I think in terms of the top six, personally for me, the only team I was surprised seeing there at this stage is Plymouth. I expected Wigan to be top six. I really talked up Wycombe pre-season. I know a lot of people were a bit downbeat on them, but I really fancied them to do quite well, following a narrow miss on escaping the drop from the Championship. And Oxford have had so many near misses the last couple of years. They were bound to come within a touching distance again. So I think the only teams that I'm probably expecting, I know it's not really a shot, but like Portsmouth, Sheffield Wednesday, but obviously still plenty of time yet for those two to steal a march. Obviously Charlton, Ipswich. This is probably the strongest League One has been in my memory anyway. I know obviously from like the last 7-8 years being a Rochdale fan, I think it was 2014 when we last got promoted from League Two. So yeah, about 7 years being in League One. I've not known the division be this strong, and there's at least 10 sides that could be contending for top 6 places. But yeah, Mark Baker, Oxford surprised me, but they have a good manager. Yeah, Cal Robinson's a cracking manager for this level. I'm really surprised no one's really took a punt on Cal Robinson. I don't think I think it's a bit Marmite, Cal Robinson, even where many people seem to either love him or hate him. I'm not sure why. He did well at MK Dons. I know he had a bit of a mixed bag at Charlton, but he's doing a cracking job at Oxford as well. And just before we move on, Steve Timms, I know people rate their squad, but MK Dons have surprised me. Yeah, I think MK Dons have surprised a lot of people, given the late managerial change there over the summer. But yeah, they're doing really, really well at the moment. I'll be very shocked if they can maintain that for a full 46 game season. But credit to them at the halfway stage, being within the mix for the top 6. We're going to come back to talk about some like underachievers and overachievers in a few minutes, but I do want to go and have a look at the bottom end of the table. So currently, we've got Doncaster, Crewe, Gillingham, and Lincoln as your bottom 4. For you, Ben, are they your 4 worst sides in the division? Or out of those 4, is there any that really stick out as being particularly poor?
Yeah, they're not surprising for me at all. Maybe Doncaster more so, because Doncaster, they did very well under Moore, but ultimately after last season, they haven't been able to maintain it at all. They're rock bottom of the table with 16 points, and they've only won one of their last five. But the team who I would like to talk about in regards to a team that is underperforming, and they have made a bit of a comeback considering where they were a couple of weeks ago. I know they're 23rd, but they were in dire straits a few weeks ago. Crewe have been a very disappointing team so far this season. When you look at their transfer window, they've signed the likes of Callum McFadden, Scott Cashgate, Ben Knight, players who haven't really hit the ground running at all, more so the likes of Scott Cashgate. Because, these players should have been influential for this side, and I think they were kind of brought in to replace the likes of Charlie Kirk. All the players that they've lost, I'm just reading through my notes a minute on the players who they've lost, and they've lost some big players, Ryan Wintle, Charlie Kirk. So the players who I just mentioned a minute ago, who they brought in, they were brought in to replace the likes of those players, and ultimately they failed to replace them. Owen Dale as well, who is a fantastic player. All these players they haven't really replaced very well at all. So when you actually look at it from that point of view, is there any surprise that they are where they are at the moment? Maybe not. David Artell hasn't signed very well at all, really. They've had a very poor transfer window, in my opinion. So they're a team who I'm both surprised at considering how well they did last season, and not surprised at see where they are at the moment. So I've said this to a lot of my friends. That Crewe side, when we were there last season, they were one of the best sides I've seen play football in League One. They played very adventurous football, very brave football, but unfortunately without their star players who they did let go, and again the likes of Charlie Kirk, Ryan Wintle, they haven't been able to find that formula again at all, really. Could they maybe climb up and maintain a bit of form? Maybe, maybe not. But Gillingham, again, we've spoken about Gillingham so much. Steve Evans, he had his head turned by Stevenage. I'll let you talk about this Gillingham side in more detail, David. And again, Lincoln as well, they're 21st at the moment. We could spend all day talking about Lincoln, as we haven't actually spoken about them a lot. But what's gone wrong for them, I don't know. So, David, first of all, what are your thoughts on the bottom teams at the moment in League One, and the likes of Lincoln and Gillingham? If you would like to touch on them and where it's gone wrong for them, then please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think the big issue with Lincoln is the squad that they had got to the playoff final last season was absolutely ripped apart over the summer. And they had quite a lot of good loan signs from last year, Morgan Rogers from City. Obviously, they lost John Grant over the summer as well. So, yeah, they've been quite unfortunate. They weren't able to retain a lot of squad, which is a shame, really, because they were fantastic to watch at times last season. In terms of the only player that they've really kept hold of that of note really was Anthony Scully. He was one player that I was really impressed with last season. He has brought that form into this season as well. In terms of his inputs, he had 7 goals from 16 league games so far. So yeah, he's had a really good start to the season, and I'm pretty certain he came quite close to leaving in the summer transfer window. And I think there's a potential that could that move could materialise in January. And if he was to leave, I really would fear for them. They did manage to get in Luis Fiorini from City, Man City, and he's a really, really standout player for them as well. I know City fans have got a lot of high hopes from potentially breaking into the first team in a few years as well. But yeah, if I was a Lincoln fan, I'd be quite worried heading into the second half of the season, because it's been a huge shock. The drop in quality compared to last season. I know the gaffer has got a lot going on at the moment. Michael Appleton, I know he's got a lot going on with his own personal health, and again, we do wish him the best with that. But yeah, it doesn't look good for Lincoln at this moment in time. Gillingham, very similar to Lincoln, lost a few key players from last season. They managed to keep hold of some of the better players. Obviously, Vidane Oliver leading the line for them. real standout player. Getting in Daniel Adshead on loan from Norwich as well. I'm a big fan of Adshead from his days at Rochdale. Very, very promising player, but he's not going to be one of those that can single-handedly keep a team up, especially when he's only just turned 20 towards the back end of the year. Gillingham are the team I fear for the most. Apart from Doncaster, I really do have a fear for Gillingham going down this season. Steve Evans, I don't think his heart's quite in that job at the moment after the Stevenage business. Yeah, I think Gillingham are in absolute dire straits, and I'm pretty confident we'll see them in the bottom four at the end of the season. Just a couple of comments that have come in whilst we've been talking about some of the relegation candidates. Mark Baker, Lincoln and Gillingham have absolutely collapsed compared to this point last season. Yeah, definitely, Bart. Especially when you consider this point last season, Lincoln were pushing for a top 2 spot and obviously losing the playoff final. I think a lot of people expected a lot better from them this season. Steve Tim's in agreement as well about Lincoln and Gillingham should be doing better. Fleetwood should be doing better as well, I reckon. We'll talk about Fleetwood in a second because they've kind of turned things around over the last few weeks. Chris Saunders, Lincoln 1 point in the last 5 games. Shocking, really, considering they were really pushing for automatic promotion barely 12 months ago. Yeah, and that's just it for the relegation stuff at the moment. We'll come back to the rest of the comments because it is relating to some of the sides that we are going to talk about in terms of our manager, player, and young player of the season awards. Just looking outside the bottom 4 at the moment, Ben. So we've got Wimbledon, Morecambe, and Fleetwood. Were they teams you were expecting to be in the mix for the bottom 4 to start the season?
Now, first of all, some of you may have heard an echo. My microphone has the most daft feature ever. You can turn echo on and off on here, so I must have accidentally have slipped that up. So if you want to know what the most useless feature on a microphone is, then that is that. I've turned it off now, so many apologies about that. But talking about echoes, AFC Wimbledon have very much been an echo in League One. They didn't spend anything and they didn't really sell any players at all, really. They sold the likes of Shane McLaughlin and Joe Piggott. Shane McLaughlin was a very talented player, but he's gone off now. And Joe Piggott as well, he's now sitting on the bench at Ipswich Town. Looks like he might go sooner rather than later. So FC Wimbledon, it's not really surprising to see where they are at the moment. They have signed the likes of Darius Charles from Wickham, Aaron Presley and McCormick from Chelsea. So again, it's no surprise to see where they are at all. I think they're just happy to be where they are at the moment, to be honest, because this isn't really a team who you ever really expect to get relegated. They're a team who are just kind of happy to chug along in League One. They do play some good football. Mark Robinson is a very talented manager. I know he hasn't got a lot of experience, but he will get that experience at AFC Wimbledon. So again, I reckon it's no disappointment to see where they are at the moment. 18th, I wouldn't be disappointed at all if I was an AFC Wimbledon fan. But again, this is a team who you won't really expect to do much over the course of a season. They won't get relegated. They certainly, in my opinion, won't get promoted as of yet. They're a team who are just happy to be where they are. Morecambe, same for them, really. Again, this is a Morecambe side who I have been impressed with. And again, I think we've mentioned it in the past on the show about all the teams that have gotten promoted from last season. They've actually fared very well in League One, and Stephen Robinson has done a decent job so far at Morecambe. Now, they lost Derek Adams last season. He was a fantastic manager. Why Derek Adams went to Bradford, I have no idea, but that is for the League Two show. But overall, this Morecambe side have been doing incredibly well. When you look at the players they've signed, when you look at how well they've been doing, because again, they're another team who didn't really splash out at all in the transfer window. They're a small club, so that shouldn't really be expected. But to be 19th at the moment, they're fairly safe from relegation, in my opinion. They've been doing very, very well. And they're a club who should really be proud of themselves, really, because they've come so far in such a short period of time that to be where they are at the moment is incredibly, incredibly impressive. Fleetwood, I remember earlier on in the season, like Simon Grayson being at Fleetwood, we mentioned them every single week. And I think one of the things that we did bring up back then was whether Fleetwood took too long to sack Simon Grayson. Now, my opinion of Simon Grayson is quite harsh. I reckon Simon Grayson has struggled a bit in his recent career because he hasn't done much at various football clubs. He's been a manager who hasn't really stayed at clubs for that long, and he also plays very negative football. He isn't a manager who will really be there for the long term at all. So Fleetwood, for them, to kind of get rid of him so late, because in reality they did get rid of him incredibly late. It was only, I think it was late November when they sacked him. That was incredibly disappointing, and it could potentially affect them come the running at the end of the season. Stephen Craney's a great young manager. I wish him all the best because I reckon he's the right manager for them, and they should keep him should they get relegated because Stephen Craney could potentially do fantastic stuff for this Fleetwood side. But as I said, I reckon the reason why Fleetwood are where they are at the moment is because of their refusal to sack Grayson. And finally, because I know I've been wittering on about these teams for quite a bit, Lincoln City. Where do I go with them? Michael Appleton, he was a manager, he was linked with Ipswich Town, and he was actually in advanced talks with us as well. So he was a manager who was going to come through. He's still highly rated considering the fact that they are 21st at the moment in League One. But when you look at this Lincoln side, I'm not sure what's gone wrong really. Now, in my notes, I've written that exact thing that I just don't really know what's gone wrong for them. Maybe it's off the field issues. Their manager has sadly been very, very poorly, or whether it's their signings. They've signed the likes of Teddy Bishop, Chris Maguire on a free from Sunderland, Hakeem Adelican from Bristol Rovers, who should really be doing better than he should. He's a very talented young player. He's been there, he's done that, and he was highly rated at Bristol. And they've also signed the likes of Morgan Whitaker on loan. So whether it's poor recruitment, because none of these players have hit the ground running at all, in my opinion. I'm not too sure. That is for the chat and you, David, to decide whether they've had a poor transfer window. And also the fact that they did let go of players as well. They let go of Tyre Eden to Blackburn, who they didn't really replace at all, really. They developed Tyre Eden really well. He used to play for Fulham, and he was a cracking player, a player who they just didn't replace. They let go of George Grant as well. He was a player that they would have loved to have kept. And ultimately, when you look at this, it's a very similar story to other teams down at the bottom of League One, the likes of Crewe. Teams who just haven't replaced big players and who are there because they haven't replaced them and they've signed very, very poorly. Do you think that's fair to say, David? And those teams that I've just spoken about, what do you think of them? Those in the chat as well, what do you think of the likes of Lincoln and their teams towards the bottom of League One, like Fleetwood as well? Do you reckon it's a surprise to see them there, or do you reckon that they're there for a reason?
Yeah, I think obviously when it means saying harsh, Wimbledon, Morecambe, Fleetwood, they are probably the three smallest sides in this division in terms of crowds, budgets, things like that. So it's no surprise to see them down there in the mix. Lincoln, as I kind of touched on, I think they were kind of victims of their own success, really, for last season. They struck gold in the transfer market last season. And this season, I don't think they quite replicated that success. So, I think that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, I think in terms of the three, Wimbledon, Morecambe, Fleetwood, I think the size, the strength of League One this season, I think it's a little bit too much for them. And I think that's why we're probably seeing them down there this season. Just before we head over to our mini awards for the first half of the season, Ben, I'm going to come to you first on this one. I want from you your three biggest overachievers so far this season. So who'd your three overachievers be so far?
So my three biggest overachievers, in my opinion, I have given this a bit of thought, but Plymouth Argyle, for one, considering who they've brought in. They haven't brought in anything. Their centre back, James Wilson, was one of the biggest players they brought in. He was a player on a free. He played for Ipswich Town. He's been a fantastic player for them this season. So Plymouth Argyle, with and without their old manager, they've been massively overperforming this season, and they're a very good team as well. MK Dons, Liam Manning is a fantastic manager. Again, another manager who was linked with all the big clubs a couple of weeks ago when we had quite a few sackings. But Liam Manning has been doing miracles at that club. They have great players, the likes of Scott Twine, Troy Parrott, who've been doing massively for the club recently. So regardless of where they finish at the end of the season, MK Don should really be proud of themselves and how they've performed this season. They're a team who I do admire. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I do admire them for how they play, for how Liam Manning has gotten them playing, and for their use of youngsters. And finally, when looking through this table, if you talk about overachievers, there's not really much to go by, really, because the likes of Wigan and Wycombe have been doing very, very well. We expected to see them there, and a lot of the other big clubs have actually been underachieving. But a club who I would like to mention is Cheltenham. Now, Cheltenham is probably a team who've probably fallen a bit under the radar this season because, again, like they are one of those teams, a team who would just quietly and happily chug along in League One. But they are a small club, with all due respect, and many may have had them tipped to get relegated. But Michael Duff has done incredibly well for them so far this season. Another team who I could add there is Morecambe as well. But Cheltenham, in my opinion, have overachieved this season, and I've been very impressed by them too. So what are your 3 picks, David? And if you're in the chat, give us your picks as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my 3 as MK Dons, Accrington, and Shrewsbury. So you kind of touched on a couple I was going to obviously mention, but just to be a little bit different. Accrington, 10th in the league, with the exception of the 3 sides mentioned earlier as being the smaller sides in terms of budget and crowd. Accrington, another one of those small crowds, small budget. So fair play to them for being 10th in the league. Shrewsbury, I'd never would have had them being 14th at the stage of the season. At one point, they were looking like absolute relegation fodder. So yeah, for me, they're my top 3 overachievers. In terms of underachievers, Ben, so who are your 3 underachievers so far?
Now, it's actually, I mean, I'm just reading through the comments right now, and Gary Jones has given us his underachievers as Lincoln, Charlton, Doncaster, and Gillingham. And I'd actually agree with him. I'm not going to pick those as there are plenty of other teams to pick, but I reckon he does have a good point for picking those clubs, as they are clubs that have been underachieving. But real quickly, Sheffield Wednesday under Darren Moore. Now, news has just broke, that Jack Hunt has been injured. I was just reading the news right then. He's a huge blow for them. And this is a team, again, who've been massively underachieving. They have some big players in their squad. They've managed to keep some big players from the Championship, like Dominic Iorfa. And ultimately, I know he's injured at the moment, but ultimately, it hasn't played their way at all. I know some clubs do find League One to be a bit of a culture shock, as League One is a very rough and robust league with some very good sides as well. But the Sheffield Wednesday side should really be more competitive. They haven't been performing well at all. Charlton, now in my notes about Charlton, bear with me, I just want to get them up, because Charlton are a team who, again, have been massively underperforming. They spent £700,000 in the transfer window, signed the likes of Charlie Kirk, Elliot Lee, Harry Arter, Stephen Henderson, all that I mentioned earlier on in the show. But one problem with them is that a lot of their players are very old, like 33 years old. It's Harry Arter, Stephen Henderson as well. Papa Suarez, 32. So Nigel Adkins, he signed a lot of old players, and he wasn't really looking forward to the future, if that makes sense. Because if you sign these old players, they're not going to last there long term, and a lot of them have been found out, the likes of Chris Gunter. So is it really any surprise to see them where they are? It is really, because don't forget, even though these players are coming towards the latter stages of their career, they are incredibly experienced, and you would have thought that their experience will kind of see them through. But Johnny Jackson is there now. I know he's had a bit of a rough start to his full-time career at Charlton, but he's a very good manager. He was very good there when he was caretaker. And I would have gone for Portsmouth as my underachievers, but they're climbing up the table a bit now. They're doing incredibly well. So another team who I'm going to bring up is Bolton Wanderers. Look, Bolton, they're still kind of new to League One. They're still a team who are climbing back from where they were a couple of years ago when they were in real dire straits with their finances. But given who Ian Everett has signed, the players he signed, and okay, we mention this each and every week, but the outrageous statement he made towards the beginning of the season, actually, when he said that they were the best team in League One. This is a team who are massively underperforming. For a team who have signed the likes of Kachunga, this is a team who, again, probably aren't the best in League One. Sorry, Ian. And who ultimately should definitely be doing better. So yeah, Bolton, they're probably going to be my third choice because again, they have been very disappointing. Would you say that's fair to say, David?
Yeah, I'd agree for the most part. I think my three are similar-ish. I've gone with Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich, and Bolton. Again, very similar reasons, and I think Ipswich, just to kind of touch on them again, just when you brought in the quality they have done, I was expecting a lot better from those. But those are my three underachievers there, Ben. Anyway.
So next we're going to the League One awards. Now we've been mentioning all week on Twitter, asking you for your free picks. We've asked you for your manager of the year, player of the year, and young player of the year. So you still have time to get your ones in because we will read them out in the show. We are very interested to hear them. But to start off with, we are going to go for our young players, players of the year, and managers of the year. So first of all, we are going to go for our manager of the year. I'm not going to get the graphics up straight away as that will be a spoiler, but we did have two other managers who were in contention as well, and we will get to them once we do reveal our manager of the year. But for our manager of the year, Paul Warne has won the award. He's been fantastic this season. But David, in your opinion, just how fantastic has Paul Warne been at Rotherham this season? And afterwards, give us a bit on both Liam Richardson and Carl Robinson.
Yeah, I think me and you unanimously agreed on Paul Warne, didn't we, as being the standout manager. And he's been in that Rotherham job quite a while now, and he's done a fantastic job. Like I said earlier, I think it'd be quite easy for a board, but especially when they're in the Championship to get rid of them anyway. But yeah, definitely the standout there as well. Liam Richardson, again, very, very good choice for that. Well, to come third in that award. Sorry, second. I completely keep losing my track. Sorry. I think a lot of people's opinions on Liam Richardson stem from the absolute miracle he performed last season, keeping them in the league, and things do look great for Wigan. Only 4 points outside the top two. They have got 3 games in on Rotherham and Sunderland, so expect that 5-point gap to narrow over the coming weeks. I think we're going to be one of the bigger victims of the COVID call-offs, aren't they? And they're definitely playing catch-up a lot in the second half of the season. Carl Robinson as well, for me, has done an absolutely incredible job getting Oxford to 5th again this season. Especially when you look at some of the teams that are in and around the playoffs, see Oxford in that company. So yeah, I think Carl Robinson's done an absolutely cracking job there. But what do you think of those three, Ben?
Yeah, I'd agree with those because, like Paul Warne, we've talked about him quite a bit on this show. He's a very good manager. And again, he has the intelligence, he has the knowledge of both leagues to do a great job at Rotherham. And this Rotherham side seem a bit different than they were last season and during their previous seasons in League One. And by that, I mean they look a lot better. They look like the complete side, in my opinion, the complete League One side, and they're storming the league. Liam Richardson, considering what the club was like when he was caretaker, and when he first took over, they were having to play a lot of young players from their academy, some players on a free, young players as well. They're in dire straits, and last season I thought they were going to go down, but they've actually performed very, very well. And Carl Robinson, he's a great manager in my opinion. He's always linked to all the big clubs, and it's very, very easy for clubs to kind of fall away, especially after last season, the heartbreak they had last season. I remember in the Championship when Reading got into the playoffs, the season after they almost got relegated. So for Carl Robinson to still have Oxford where they are at the moment, he's done a very, very good job for them. But finally, we are going to do not finally, but we're going to do the player of the year before we go on to the young player of the year. So for our player of the year, we've gone for Cole Stockton with Ross Stewart and Panucci, Kamara, Ross Stewart coming in second, Panucci, Kamara coming in third place. So Cole Stockton, what is there to say about him? Because he's a fantastic player. He's done so well so far this season. Top scorer. Just how impressed have you been with him so far this season?
Oh, he's been absolutely incredible, Cole Stockton, Anthony, and I don't know where he's found this form from, because when you look at his goal scoring record over the recent years, this is already his best goal scoring season. Last season he scored 13 in League Two. He's already scored 15 this season. I think he barely before the last 2 seasons he barely scrapes 15 goals in total for his whole career. So yeah, whatever Cole Stockton has done this season is definitely working, and he looks absolutely incredible. Dante for Morecambe. In terms to round off that top 3, it was very difficult. I think me and you had very different opinions on that, didn't we, Ben? Our top 3. So obviously Stewart at Sunderland. The goals again speak for themselves, and he's been instrumental in Sunderland's charge into automatic promotion contention. And Kamara at Plymouth, very instrumental in Plymouth's playoff charge, and he definitely does lead from the front in the middle of the park. So I think it's a very solid top 3. I think that's probably the 3 I think we'll get most debate over anyway. I think it's very difficult to pick a top 3, but that's our mutually agreed one, isn't it, Ben? But yeah, what did you think of the 3?
Yeah, I'd say that we've both picked some very good players, and I reckon for the Player of the Year, Cole Stockton definitely deserves it, because again, you mentioned how he hasn't necessarily been prolific in the past. He's been instrumental for this Morecambe side, and considering that they're a new team in League One and Cole Stockton hasn't got much experience in League One, he's done absolutely magnificently too. And Kamara, who I picked, he's a great midfielder for Plymouth. And ultimately, I think we picked some very good players. But just finally, we've now gone on to the Young Player of the Year. Scott Twine wins the award. He's our Young Player of the Year 2021, alongside Jay Matete, who comes in second, and Wigan's Callum Lang, who comes in third. Real quickly, David, what are your thoughts on Scott Twine? How good has it been for the MK Dons? And give us a bit on Jay Matete and Callum Lang as well.
Yeah, I think Scott Twine is without doubt the standout. 22 years of age. He's got a very bright future in the game. 11 goals, 7 assists so far in the league this season for the MK Dons. And yeah, he's been an absolutely cracking addition following his move in the summer from Swindon. Really impressed him. Jay Matete from Fleetwood, really impressed with him. Again, strong in the middle of the park for Fleetwood. And I think he's one of the few players at Fleetwood so far that can walk off the pitch every game at the minute with his head held high. I think there's a lot of clubs higher up the chain looking at him in this January transfer window. I think if Fleetwood have managed to keep hold of him, they've done quite well. Callum Lang getting in on the top 3. I think with Callum Lang, I think I had him second after Scott Twine. Obviously, the way me and Ben worked it out, he came in at third. But Callum Lang's been very impressive this season. He can be considered very unfortunate to be higher up the list. He's been instrumental in Wigan's promotion charge anyway. What do you think of that top 3, Ben?
Yeah, I reckon the top 3 are absolutely spot on, really. And the thing is that League One is a very difficult league to play in. Scott Twine has done absolutely magnificently in League One, and he's again, he's been consistent as well. And I reckon that's what the MK Dons have really needed. But just to finish up their show, I'm going to do a really poor transition, like I do every week, as my transitions do suck. Onto you, David. We're now going to go on to the questions, I think.
Yeah, so we didn't get anything in advance on Twitter, but it's not the end of the world. We've asked you guys to bring your choices through for the top 3 in your categories. So I'll go through the ones we received on Twitter. So we had John Fleming saying Cole Stockton or maybe John Ironsides player of the season. I don't think Ironsides made our top 3, but again, really good season so far. In terms of manager, he went with Cal Robinson or Gareth Ainsworth. Ben Morris, Ironside at Cambridge. I think we might have missed one out there, Ben, but never mind. Robinson or Ainsworth for manager. A lot of support for those two. Dan Green, manager had call over the year as a whole, but Paul Warren, so he agrees with us, and Cole Stockton. So Dan agreeing with our number one picks for that one. Chris Saunders, Gareth Ainsworth has got to be on the show. Again, a lot of mentions for Ainsworth, and Michael Smith or Cole Stockton for player. Jonathan Belwith, Rotherham have done well, so Paul Warren and Cole Stockton for player, I'd say. Jonathan Harris, manager would have to be Duff for me at Cheltenham. That's one we didn't mention, so another different one there. Player Cole Stockton, and young player bias, but Scott Twine, enough said. Yes, there's a lot of agreements there, but players like Ironside and Ainsworth getting mentions that we didn't. So, yeah, there's a lot of different opinions. But yeah, we'll jump into the questions. So we did get one in on Twitter from Matteo. So who's the best Spanish player in League One this season? I've actually done my research on this, Matteo, because you've asked a couple of times this season about Spanish representation in League One. And there's only 2 Spanish players in League One this season. So we've got Madrid Gomez at Crewe. He's only featured 8 times in the leagues this season so far. And Alex Rodriguez at Oxford, who's featured in 13 games and obviously playing a lot more games. I think we have to say that Alex Rodriguez is probably the best Spanish player in League One, but unfortunately, Matthew, there's not much competition, unfortunately, for that one. Heading on to live chat. So, question for you, Ben, this one from Mark Baker. Heard Ipswich have been in talks with Derek McInnes before they decided to go with McKenna. Would he have been a better option?
Now, my only worry about quickly about McKenna is that we've gone for young managers before. Paul Hurst, who I think is now at Grimsby, I might be wrong on that. We hired him a couple of years ago and it didn't work out very well at all. He did well at Shrewsbury, as you can all remember, but ultimately he came into Ipswich and it just turned out to be a bit of a simply the job turned out to be too big for him. That's what I'm trying to say. But Derek McInnes, he's a great manager. I would have had him at the club. I think he was at Aberdeen. I might be wrong in saying that, but he did a fantastic job there. So he's a manager who I would have had, but you can't win with some Ipswich fans. 1 minute you want a young manager, 1 minute you want an experienced one. So regardless of who we would have brought in, whether it would have been McInnes, Appleton, or again McKenna, I reckon there'll still be fans who don't agree regardless. But yeah, McInnes, I would have had him at Ipswich. I reckon many fans in League One would have him. I could see maybe teams such as Sheffield Wednesday going in for him. So Sheffield Wednesday get rid of Darren Moore. But yeah, he's a manager who's available at the moment, and I reckon he could get any job, or not any job, but any job in League One and a lot of jobs in the Championship.
Next question is from Josh Lane. So what do you think of the move if James Hill to AFC Bournemouth? So young Fleetwood defender James Hill on the brink of, I'm not sure if the move's been completed or it's on the verge of completion, but he's off to Bournemouth. So what do you make of that move for the young defender?
Yeah, just to spoil a bit of how the show is recorded, we have a private chat on StreamYard where we can talk to each other without you guys like hearing us. Nothing rude, all about football. We mentioned James Hill as a potential young player of the year because he's been a player who somehow, I don't know how, went under my radar a bit, and he has indeed been fantastic. He's only 19 years old, and ultimately he's been very, very impressive at the club and was offered a new contract by Fleetwood at the beginning of the season. So he has joined AFC Wimbledon on an undisclosed fee on a 4-year contract. He's also an under-20 international. He recently made his under-20s debut in October, and yeah, he's a very good young player. He's actually a defender. And again, he will be a star one day, whether in the Championship, whether in the Premier League. So Bournemouth have definitely picked up a real coup here because James Hill is a fantastic player. So what do you think about James Hill, David? And yeah, player of the year. He could have been in contention, couldn't he?
Yeah, I think he was kind of one, without being so disrespectful to defenders, but when you talk about players of the season, I think you can kind of quickly overlook defenders, whether that's right or wrong. But yeah, unfortunately, he didn't get a mention on this one. But yeah, he's going to be a big player for Bournemouth in the coming years. Like I say, only 19 years of age, so I'm expecting a lot of big things there. Next question is from Dan Green. It's a question for Ben as an Ipswich fan. What happened with Louis Barry? Such a highly rated talent, but Tractor Boys didn't get the best out of him. You have to wonder if it was a wasted expense. So yeah, he's gone back to Aston Villa now, hasn't he? So what do you make of Louis Barry's stint at Portman Road?
Yeah, Louis Barry. I mean, he's been. I can't say he's been disappointing because Paul Kirk, and I know I spoke about Mark Ashton, but I reckon Louis Barry was a Mark Ashton signing. Signed for us on loan when we signed the likes of Piggott, McCauley, Bonn. And ironically, we actually signed Louis Barry after we signed those players. So he was very much a weird signing. I think a lot of Town fans are excited to have him in, considering he scored that goal against Liverpool in the League Cup. But ultimately, yeah, very strange signing. He didn't really make any appearances for us. He started in the Peter Trophy quite a bit, and he also came off the bench. He was never really given a chance. But when you look at Louis Barry, you can look at a lot of players who Ipswich have signed over the summer. Maybe the likes of Cameron Burgess as well, Bertrand Selina, who is potentially going back to his home club in France. All of these players have been very disappointing, and they ultimately were signed without any real intention of playing them on a regular basis. I know Selina has been irregular for us, but he's been nowhere to be seen. He has recovered from his thigh injury as well. So Louis Barry, weird signing when you think about it. Again, a Mark Ashton signing, maybe a bit of Paul Cook in there as well. But again, that's just further proof that we wasted a lot of money in the summer just because we had the money. What do you think of Louis Barry, David? And he's recently been linked to Swindon. Do you reckon he'll be good for Swindon?
Yeah, I was quite shocked to see him not really get much game time at Ipswich, and so I know he's had a couple of appearances for Aston Villa, and yeah, I was kind of expecting a lot better from him this season, but yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. And I think, no disrespect to Swindon, I know Rochdale are in League Two as well, but I think he's a bit too good for League Two. I thought another League One club might be coming for him there. But yeah, that's my opinion on that one. Anyway, couple more questions. So, Chris Saunders, Morecambe have signed goalkeeper Trevor Carson from Dundee United. Did they really need a new keeper? When I saw the question come in, I had a quick look at Morecambe's squad, and Trevor Carson, unless anything else has happened today, he'll be the sixth goalkeeper on Morecambe's book. So it'd be easy to say that he's not needed. I know Morecambe have been leaking goals left, right, and centre, but surely one of the five keepers that they've got can do a better job. And he's getting on a bit. He's 33 years old, so I know in terms of goalkeeping, he's not like over the hill, but he's getting there. But yeah, it's a signing I wouldn't have made personally. Mark Baker, Plymouth signed a lad from the Irish League, Alfie Lewis. What do you make of players coming from the Irish leagues? Too much of a step up to come to League One. What do you think of that one, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about Alfie Lewis, but he is a former West Ham youngster. And again, there are a lot of clubs who have been linked with Irish players from the Irish leagues. And I can name from the top of my head a few players who actually came from the leagues. The likes of Daryl Murphy, who played for Bolton and Ipswich. He came from Waterford. Aaron Drynan, I think he came from Waterford as well. So a lot of League One and League Two players have started off their career in the Irish league. But yeah, Alfie Lewis, he is a former West Ham youngster, 22 years old, and he signed from St. Patrick's Athletic. He was signed on a free as well, and he scored 3 goals in 31 games for St. Patrick's. So a very good signing, 22 years old, plenty of time for him to develop. And yeah, he's a midfielder as well. That is also worth noting. So David, are you excited to see how Alfie Lewis does in League One?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot to be said about the talent that come over from the Irish League. I know Rochdale have had a few over the last few years, most notably Jimmy Keohane and Stephen Dooley. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to see the Irish League players come over because there is some quality in that league for sure. Mark Baker, Bersant Selena was a star at a star at Swansea, big talent in the youth at Man City. How come it didn't work out at Ipswich, Ben?
Yeah, Bersant Selena, I think the reason it didn't work out was because he ultimately got injured, and when you get injured, then you do get replaced. And ultimately, he's been replaced, and he hasn't managed to find his way back into the squad. So, yeah, it is a real shame, really. As Bersant Selena, he scored that one wonder goal for Ipswich. He is a very, very good player, and Sone Aluko has unfortunately taken his position and his role. Now, Bersant Selena, he hasn't definitely left. All of this is very strong speculation from fans more than journalists. But again, it's very, very strong proof that he has left, considering how his profile has been removed from the Ipswich side. But a good player, wonder of the left foot, a bit of a magician on the football pitch, did really, really well at Swansea. But ultimately, it's difficult to find your way into a side once you're injured and you do get replaced. So, great player. He probably still has a place in the French League too. I'm not sure who he plays for. I should really know that. But yeah, if he goes back to his parent club, he'll either get a lot of game time because he was given consistent game time, or he'll either be off to another club, maybe in the Championship, because he is a good player.
Yeah, he's definitely one that you've talked up quite a lot over the last few months, and yeah, I think there's definitely a talented player in there, isn't there? So yeah, we'll wait to see how Selena does. And I think we've just got the one more question from Ben Morris. Great show as always, fellas. Cheers, Ben. Cheltenham signed left back Ben Williams from Barnsley, Welsh under 21 international, undisclosed fee. Where have Cheltenham got the money from? I thought they were skin. Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one. I think when teams get themselves a little bit more money due to higher gate receipts, obviously get huge away followings in this division. I know because obviously crowds been back this season, haven't they? So they've definitely benefited from having unexpected bigger crowds. And that's for sure. But yeah, that's all I could really put it down to. I don't want to say they're taking a gamble on guaranteeing their League One status, but yeah, making a signing like that is definitely a big statement of intent. And one more question from John Fleming. Which club are you expecting to have the busiest window? Do you see a team with money burn a hole in their pocket, or a club that will desperately need to trim the wage bill? So what are you expecting in this transfer window, Ben?
Yeah, I'm expecting Plymouth to be very busy. We've already seen that they've signed Alfie Lewis, who we just spoke about in detail. Plymouth, the only problem that I've had with them is that they don't really have many decent backups. Now, Plymouth, I live in Cornwall. I moved down here a few years ago, and they have a lot of their youth academies in Cornwall. So you see a lot of players from down here eventually going onto their youth ranks and climbing up. The likes of Luke Jeffcott and Garside, Rio Garside. They've all come from down here. They're all local Cornish youngsters. Ultimately, they are good players, but when you look at their bench, a lot of these youngsters aren't necessarily ready yet. They will be ready one day, but they aren't ready just yet for League One football. And that is the one problem I've had with Plymouth. I think it's mainly due to them being so well run and managed from the financial side. And also reckon it's Ryan Lowe just, well, before he got sacked, just trying, or not sacked, before he left to go to Preston, just trying to, give the youngsters game time and develop them. But ultimately, I reckon it's kind of hurt them a bit, especially now that the likes of Brendan Galloway have been injured and they're now having to rely on these youngsters who last month were playing for Truro City in the 7th tier of English football, maybe 8th, and are now playing in League One, which is a bit of a jump, really, isn't it? So they're one team who I reckon are going to need quite a bit of recruitment. Another club, just going to zip through a few clubs I reckon will probably sign quite a bit in the window. Ipswich will do. We've been linked to many players. I'd be disappointed to see us sign players, as we really don't need to sign players. That would be really unnecessary if Mark Ashton dipped his hand into the transfer market once again. Portsmouth didn't sign many players at all in the January transfer window. They mostly signed a bunch of freebies, and ultimately, yeah, they're another club who didn't sign a lot. And I think now that they're on the up a bit, they're going to kind of want to bring in players just to see whether they can jump into the playoffs. And Charlton as well, we mentioned their old squad. They're they will probably benefit from a few loan signings, given the age of their squad and how they do need a few players given injuries. And finally, Sheffield Wednesday, they've lost Jack Hunt, which I said earlier on in the show, who's an absolutely massive player for them. So if they haven't got a player on the bench for him, they'll probably dip into the loan market maybe to replace him for the time being. They do need some League One experience, so I reckon they do need to go for some of the bigger names in League One. Not going to say Cole Stockton, as that probably isn't realistic, but they do need to go for some not better names, but for some experienced names in this league. So yeah, there's some of the teams who are just throw out there. But just quickly, David, who do you reckon needs to dip into the transfer window in this transfer market? I slaughtered that sentence, but you know what I'm saying.
That's all good. I'm expecting Sunderland to kind of flex a bit of financial muscle in this window. I think just to try and get them over the line. I think they'll be desperate to go up this season. I think they'll be expecting that they've been in League One for about 2 seasons too long, especially when you watch Sunderland Till I Die. I think they were banking on going up a long time ago, so I think they'll be hell for leather trying to get out of the league this season. This is probably their best chance getting out of the league this season, the way things are shaping up anyway. I'm expecting Portsmouth and Sheffield Wednesday to do a bit of business so they can try and take a bit of a gamble and getting into the top 6. I think everyone else will be relatively, I don't want to say low key, but I think it'll be like your average transfer window. But I'm expecting those 3 clubs I mentioned in particular to do some business. I have missed one question, Chris. You've rightly pointed out in the live chat. So it has been quite a busy live chat, so I apologise for missing an earlier question. Sheffield Wednesday have definitely underestimated this league. Do you think Darren Moore is the right man? Do they need to spend big 3-4 players to get the league, or is it just a few tweaks, like 1 or 2 players? Personally, Chris, I think Darren Moore is the right man. I don't think it's a quick fix to get him out of this league. And I'm expecting them to be on the spending. I don't want to say spend big, but I'm expecting a few players to come in to bolster their ranks and a bit more quality to come in. But what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of summed it up there, Chris, because, you know, Darren Moore, in my opinion, he does need to be given time just to kind of integrate himself and his philosophies into League One. But again, you know, like, this is a good manager, but maybe League One isn't the right league for him. When you look at their players, I'm not going to say they failed to recruit for League One, because what I would mean by that is signing players who've played in League One, who are experienced in League One. But they've got a bunch of Championship players who, on the surface, are very, very good, would do very well if they came back into the Championship, but ultimately are not strong, or not. I'm not going to say that, but who ultimately aren't experienced enough for League One. Many people will say, look, League One is a lower league than the Championship. But when you look at League One, in my opinion, it's probably one of the, they throw bust leagues in England. You know, like, you do get scraps in League One. It is a very tight league, and you do ultimately get some seasoned veterans who would happily clatter you. So look, they have the likes of Luongo, Nathaniel Mendes-Liang, Josh Windass, all who have been there for a while. Che Dunkley as well. I think he's still there anyway. Ultimately, these are players who are very good in the Championship, but they've never really played in League One. So it's a bit of a culture shock for them. Darren Moore, he needs to be given a bit more time, in my opinion, given how well he's done in the past for Doncaster. If you take your minds back to last year, briefly at West Brom when he won Manager of the Month, when he was their caretaker manager. Didn't last too long there, got them relegated. Ultimately, he's a very good manager. Is that fair to say, David? And how long would you give him if you were Sheffield Wednesday owner?
Personally, I give more the entire season into the start of next season. I think Sheffield Wednesday are a club that I think weren't prepared for life in League One. I definitely think he deserves the full season, given the circumstances he inherited last season. I definitely think he deserves to get it right, and I think they will give him the time. I expect him to see the season out. I'd be very shocked if he wasn't there at the end of the season anyway. Last question from Mark Baker. You guys, you guys still doing your league show? I presume you mean the League Two show. And do you still take questions on there too? Yeah, we still do. It's going to be on Friday this week, the League Two show. Friday, and it'll be very similar to this. We're going to do a mid-season review. So yeah, similarly, like we're going to be doing like the manager, young player, player of the season, take any questions again. So yeah, if you've got those, if you want to pop on the live chat for this, or we've got the stuff on Twitter as well to get them in on there. But yeah, very busy show this evening, and a really good way to start 2022. So thank you very much, guys, for being as active as you have been in the live chat. Just before we do wrap up the usual stuff, this will be the first show that we're going to have out on audio format. So wherever you like to listen to your podcast, so Spotify, Amazon Music, iTunes, the show will be up on there tomorrow. So if you want some listening on your way to work, or you're a bit bored working from home, you want to put some music on the background, give us a listen. If you want to listen to the show, if you missed anything, or you'd rather listen to the show than watching our two faces on your screen, yeah, the audio option will be there tomorrow. So make sure you do check out the League One show audio only formats, and that will also apply to the League Two show. That'll go out the day after we've recorded that, so that'll go up on Saturday, I imagine. But yeah, that's everything. But yeah, just to round up as usual. So in the meantime, we've got the website otvfootball.net. We've had quite a bit of League One content come out on there lately, so make sure you head over there for everything that you want football related. Also, the very active Twitter page we have, Over the Bar FB. Make sure you come over there, join the conversations on there. Get all the new video and written content and also stuff we feel like you might enjoy shared on there. Also, if you are watching us on Twitter, as I said earlier in the show, make sure you head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/overthebarfb. Head over to YouTube, drop us a subscribe, like the video. Same if you are listening to the audio shows on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, and whatnot. Make sure you head over and listen to us on there. But that is everything for this week. Thank you very much for joining us again. Again, make sure you come over and watch us on the League Two show on Friday. Also, we've got the Bundesliga show coming up. Coming back next week. They've done a question and answer show tonight, so make sure you check those guys out as well. We'll see you all very, very soon.
Well, I'm exhausted.